Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 83rd ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording once again from our own homes. I always mess up the intro right there because it's just a break in the action. So I'm Cameron Albert, and I'm joined once again for the 83rd time by my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing great, Cameron. Just being an American hero by staying home feels good. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. I can only be a hero when it comes to the podcast because unfortunately I still am deemed essential and go to work just about every day. So, but we're doing our part as far as the podcast goes by doing everything remotely now for the third week. So hopefully we're not still doing this by the time we get to episode 100, but you never know. We may have to each have a 100 episode celebration cake in the comfort of our own homes. No Drew Lock this week. He was busy. We tried to get him on, but we didn't want to push it. 2 weeks is pretty good. So no Drew Lock this week, but we'll see. It won't be the last we've seen of Drew Lock. That's for sure. Kyle,
The audio
Cameron,
listeners
producer,
are like, "What?"
Oh yeah, you got to go to YouTube if you want to see Drew Lock. He doesn't speak very much. Kyle, producer Cameron and I played a match of 2K basketball, and the Missouri Tigers they put a hurting on producer Cameron's Louisville Sluggers.
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, Drew Smith, played his efficient brand of hard-nosed defense, and just made the right plays that needed to be made and pulled out the win.
Did you make his his post moves at like 100, like 100 rating?
Oh, he's got some up and under moves, some post fadeaways, pump fakes that very reminiscent of the real life Drew Smith.
It's hard to guard.
Yeah.
We might see each other in the playoffs. So if I can sneak into the playoffs, we're gonna get ourselves a playoff series out of it. So we'll see.
Maybe the 1-8 matchup in the playoffs. If you somehow become the 7 seed, then I'll just tank a little bit to get the 2 seed.
I can just tank a little bit to get the 8 seed. I don't care.
All right, that works too. I think Kyle, you and I might meet in the NBA Finals, if the CPU doesn't knock one of us off.
It's very possible.
Gotta watch out for the Lakers.
That's true.
Yeah, they're good.
Kyle, we've got some. This is gonna be a mostly news episode. There's plenty to talk about, and we can elaborate on some of these topics a little bit. Do you want to start with football or basketball?
I don't care.
Oh, well, thanks for helping me make a decision. Let's start with basketball then.
Okay.
Basketball news. Mizzou was kind of in on graduate transfer from Arkansas, Jalen Harris, and he has announced on Twitter that he will be joining the Georgetown Hoyas. I think Patrick Ewing is the coach over there.
Yeah, he is.
So they're getting themselves a guard.
Yeah, I think that was a transfer for Missouri that never really made sense to me, at least personally. I think Missouri needs to go for somebody who can just put the ball in the hoop and somebody that gives us a scoring spark, because obviously that's been the struggle for the past 2 years now. So, and I just don't think that Jalen Harris was that guy. I think he averaged 3 or 4 points a game at Arkansas. He is a good passer. He had 2 or 3 assists a game, but I don't think that was the ideal spot for Missouri to make a move. Personally, I think there's a lot of better options out there.
Yeah, I think Jalen Harris would have been a guy you had to take in addition to a guy like Justin Turner. Mm-hmm. I think just a Jalen Harris, that's adding depth at a spot where, Drew Smith and Xavier Pinson can hold down the point guard spot and run the offense just fine. I don't think they necessarily need any more depth there. Now, it wouldn't hurt to, add a guy that can handle the ball in a pinch and create some offense for others. But like you said, Mizzou is really in need of a guy that can make some offense for himself and go get a bucket. And from his time at Arkansas, Jalen Harris just wasn't really that guy.
Yeah.
Speaking of Justin Turner, um, man, it seems like Mizzou is all in on Justin Turner,
They should
and
be.
yeah, yeah, rightly so. And you know, we're thankful that everybody's in agreement here, and it seems like the coaching staff is in agreement that they're making him a priority. I wanted to mention Matt Harris of Rock M Nation reached out to Justin Turner, and then he shared a little bit of information on Twitter. And let me pull that up real quick. He also published a really good article on rockmnation.com, so be sure to go check that out for more information. But a couple of things he said on Twitter regarding Conzo Martin. Turner said, quote, "He's a great person and a great leader." And he specifically mentioned Cassius Robertson as being, somebody that had really good success as a one-year transfer under Martin. He said he likes how Mizzou spaces the floor, and he noticed the Tigers will push the ball and pick up the tempo when it's advantageous. And he said he likes that Mizzou uses multiple ball handlers. And as far as a timeline, he said it's fluid, and if he's able to take visits, which the way things are going, it doesn't really seem like he'll be able to, then he'll use that to gather more information. But if he can't get a visit, that will not be a deal breaker. So some good information there, and like I said, really good article on rockmnation.com if you want more information about Turner as a player. At this point, yeah, Missouri needs to be all in on him, and I really hope they can pull out a commitment with him.
Yeah, I listened to a short podcast actually with an interview with Justin Turner with John Goodman, Jeff Goodman from ESPN. Actually, I don't even know if he works for ESPN anymore. I probably should have looked that up. But uh, anyways,
John Goodman never worked for ESPN, but he's a good actor.
I knew I was gonna get that mixed up. Jeff Goodman. I don't know who he works for. Anyways, it was a pretty good podcast with an interview with Justin Turner. He's definitely it's a different kind of recruiting battle than you might think for like a guy coming out of high school. Probably wants the best offer. I'm using air quotes, being probably just the program with the most prestige. A Duke or a North Carolina or whatever that a program like that. But I think a guy who's a little bit older, has been through the recruiting process, has been through a few years of college basketball, is potentially looking for something different, and that's obviously immediate playing time. The X and O's, if you will. They're probably looking at the recruiting situation a little bit differently. So I think that gives Missouri a chance here because I obviously Conzo Martin, really just an incredible guy. Can really just relate to recruits. And I think that just they're going to look at his style of play and what can, what they've done in the past to offer me and how can I make an impact. And I just think that I enjoyed listening to Justin Turner talk just because I think it reassured me that I think Missouri's got a shot. And he specifically mentioned Conzo Martin as a guy who had been recruiting him and liked how he had been recruiting him. So, it definitely feels like Missouri is in the mix for sure here. Not that we didn't already know that, but I really think Missouri's got a shot.
Yeah, it's good to hear that he specifically talked about or mentioned Conzo Martin recruiting him. I liked that he was aware of the success that Missouri had with Cassius Robertson. And, I mean, you just, specifically with Cassius Robertson, it makes me think of that team and how they had him and Jordan Barnett and even Jonte Porter, who, when things weren't going well and you just needed a bucket, you could kind of just kick it out to those guys and they could make something happen. Whether it was 3-point shooting from all three of them, or even Cassius getting to the rim, Barnett cutting for a dunk, Jonte's passing ability, the offense was so much more dynamic with those three And aside from Drew Smith being able to make some things happen in the paint, I don't know. They just don't have those kind of guys, especially when you talk about 3-point shooting that can just go get a bucket when you need it.
For sure. And I wonder if we may have unrealistic expectations after watching Cassius Robertson just come right in and pretty much immediately inject instant offense into that team. I don't know how common that is for a graduate transfer to just come in and be like pretty much the best player on a really good team. It may not be that common. So even if we did land Justin Turner, um, I'm not sure that it would be as seamless as a transition as Cassius Robertson was, but absolutely would be an instant start from day one, and could potentially help us win. I don't know, three more games, 3 to 5. Would that be probably not five, but I think you get the point that definitely he would add a great scoring threat that is currently not on the roster.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, 3 games. I mean, that's kind of, last week we toyed around with what a difference 3 games can make in the course of a season. And 3 games seems like a lot, but that's just a handful of possessions where you just, can't get a basket when you need one. Or, you've got a guy that is just not the offensive threat that you need out there. You think of like Torrance Watson or Javon Pickett when they're getting a lot of these minutes on the wing, and sometimes they're just a liability on offense, and you just need a guy in there that can reliably um, make a basket. And Xavier Pinson showed that towards the end of the season, but that was still a relatively small sample size. Can he harness that for the entire season next year and beyond? Who knows? Is there going to be a beyond for him? Who knows?
Yeah, it's a good point. He really came on at the end of last season. Who knows if he's going to be able to sustain the production that he had? I would certainly hope so. I think a lot of it was I tend to think that skill and that talent was always there. He just kind of needed the confidence boost to go out and do it. He kind of just needs somebody to say like, okay, nobody else is going to do this if you don't just start attacking 100% of the time, which is kind of what he did. So, um, but yeah,
Yeah, we knew the skill was there. I mean, there was plenty of plays that he made even as a freshman where you saw those flashes and you were like, okay, there's something there.
mhm.
So I mean, we've talked about it, for the last, I don't know, 3 months, about not 3 months, but for quite a while, that he just kind of unlocked something that we knew was there, but maybe we just didn't realize how readily available it was for him to tap into. But I was kind of joking about him not about his future being uncertain, just because I was trying to use that as a segue to talk about him and Jeremiah Tillman and Mitchell Smith all entering their names into the NBA draft. And that used to mean they were not coming back to college, but things have changed, and players with eligibility remaining still have the ability now for the last few years to enter their name in the draft, get feedback, go through the process, be evaluated a little bit by the NBA and scouts and professionals, and still retain their eligibility so they can come back to Missouri and finish out their careers, play one more season. We know Jeremiah Tillman's already gone through this process once, so it's really just a no-risk thing for the player. There's literally no downside to it. So I'm honestly not exactly sure why, if any player has any hopes of going to the NBA, why don't they all just do this? I mean, maybe there's a cap, and maybe if too many do it, then maybe it loses something. But I think I saw last year, there's only 2 rounds in the NBA draft, so that's 60 spots. And last year, like 170 players put their name in the early period to be evaluated. So that's obviously way more than the draft can handle.
Yeah, I agree with you that I would assume all three of these guys are coming back. Pinson, he's a really bright future, and there's more ways than just the NBA to play basketball professionally. Um, you can always make good money playing overseas. I'm not sure that you leave college after your sophomore year to go play overseas, but maybe if you just really want that paycheck, that's what you do. And Jeremiah Tillman, we've known that maybe he wouldn't come back for a year or two now. Maybe he's just done with college. I don't know, but I agree with you. I think it seems like most of all three of these guys are coming back for at least one more year, and yeah, I don't know why more guys don't just go through the process, get some feedback, see what happens. I kind of saw some people criticizing these guys for doing this on Twitter, and I just don't really understand why they wouldn't. I don't think any of these three guys would reasonably tell you like, yeah, I'm ready to play in the NBA right now. But it's more about getting the feedback to understand how I can get there, or how can I be ready to do that someday.
Yeah, and yeah, anybody that I think there's plenty of people maybe that just don't quite understand the new rules and the
You're
new
probably right.
concept. Anybody that kind of has any negative feelings at all. I mean, it's literally, I don't think there's any downside to it. I
Yeah.
think it's completely risk free just to put your name out there, and maybe some Mizzou fans are being a little bit selfish and just are, they see something like this, get a little bit scared that, part of the future of the team is maybe looking to be done. But I don't really think that's the case. I think it's just, like I said, just doing your due diligence as a player to take advantage of any opportunities that are out there. I mean, that's like, if you, these players are hoping to be able to make a career out of this. And so if you're in college and you're, you know, these players for the most part, they're majoring in basketball. The ones that are trying to go pro, they're majoring in basketball so that they can continue their career in that field. So if you were majoring in business and you have an opportunity to get feedback from a marketing firm about, your skills, why would you not do that and then go back to school and work on those things?
Yeah, almost like an internship or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. It's probably just people that are selfish or just don't understand exactly what it means by them declaring for the draft. Because I just don't think any of those three guys are thinking they're ready to make the move.
Yeah, but those comments that were like, kind of laughing at them like, are these guys serious? There's no way they're pro ready or something. It's like, yeah, I don't
I'm
think,
sure
like you
they
said,
know.
I don't, yeah, I don't think they think that.
Yeah.
But on the off chance, I mean, I think back to like Nick Claxton from Georgia. He had eligibility remaining and entered his name out there and got excellent feedback. And I think that feedback did spur him on into staying in the draft and ending up in the NBA. So it can work that way for guys.
Yeah.
If the scouts and stuff. I'm not honestly. I'm not even sure who does the evaluating in this process, but um, if they just see some raw potential and a guy with the skills that the NBA is looking for, but maybe he's kind of a diamond in the rough situation, they'll let the player know, and then that'll go a long ways towards informing their decision about whether to stay in the draft or not.
Yeah.
And these players have until June 6th, I believe, to uh, formally withdraw from the draft. So still, that's plenty of time for them to make a decision. And so we'll sit tight for now. But yeah, not super worried about any of these guys leaving immediately for the NBA draft. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that.
Let's see here. You mentioned to me recruiting about a recruiting dead period. Was that for all recruiting or specific to a certain sport?
Um, it was in specific to football just because of the timing of the recruiting calendar. Basically, I believe
Gotcha.
they're suspending all football recruiting stuff till May 31st.
Okay. But then that was all the basketball news I had. Um, one, I was looking at what transfers are still out there. Um, it doesn't seem like at this point we're going to hear a new name that Missouri is in on. One guy I don't know if you saw much on. It was actually a transfer from Illinois, and I don't think he's a graduate transfer. He's a traditional transfer. Let me get his name here.
Shooting guard.
Yeah. Let's see here. Alan Griffin.
Hmm.
Missouri is not has, as far as I know, has not reached out to him. He's already like trimmed his list to like 5 or 6 schools. Missouri's not one of them, but man, maybe a missed opportunity there. Maybe he just wasn't interested in coming over to Missouri, but that he really seemed like the type of scoring guard wing player that we were talking about with Justin Turner, and even Josh Christopher is somebody that can inject instant offense. So he's looking at some pretty big schools: Syracuse, Dayton, Miami, among others. So that was just a name that I was like, man, I wish Missouri maybe should have reached out to him.
Two things on Alan Griffin. The first thing is I think I saw on one of his schools that he on the list that he cut was Texas. Oh, why
Hmm.
would you want to transfer from like a pretty good Big Ten team to go play at Texas? Okay, what? There's more than just winning games, but that make these decisions for people. But the other thing is, I'm pretty sure Alan Griffin was the guy who got a little chippy with Mark Smith at the end of the bragging rights game this year.
Oh, okay,
So I'm not
that
sure that that would have been something that could happen.
maybe not a great fit.
Yeah, we can't steal all of Illinois players because some of them have
Yeah,
actual bad blood. So
you're right. I was just like, I saw the raw numbers and I was like, well, it worked with, you know, Tillman, Mark Smith,
I did the same
Pickett.
thing. That's the first thing you do as a fan, especially whenever you see some of these names in a that would fill a need. You're like, okay, I'm on board.
Let's
Like,
go
how can
for
we
it.
get this guy?
Yeah.
So, but well, yeah, when we dug a little deeper, probably not going to work out.
All right. I'm glad you had some research there for me. That's all I had for basketball, though. Anything else you want to say about transfers or anything, recruiting or anything?
I think that I saw a report. There was like 500 plus names in the transfer portal right now, and I think that they expect that name to that number to go up by potentially double. So it wouldn't shock me if, which seems insane, which it wouldn't shock me if there's some more new names that surface over the next week or two. Um, but it would be nice if Missouri just gets their guy and Justin Turner and kind of shuts down grad transfer activity, and maybe they get a traditional transfer. But I wouldn't be shocked if we still hear a few more names over the course of the next few weeks.
Okay. Sounds good. Switching gears then to football and specifically former Tigers in the NFL. Blaine Gabbert is returning to Tampa Bay, where he previously played, to be the backup for Tom Brady. So, yes, Blaine Gabbert is still in the NFL, and he's maybe not by his own choice. He's taken the Chase Daniel route and just, kind of bouncing around the league and being a backup, which there's nothing wrong with that. Chase Daniel proved you can have a wonderful career, not starting very many games. And who better to sit behind on the bench than Tom Brady?
Yeah, I guess you're right. Blaine Gabbert has definitely not had the NFL career that he probably hoped for, but still making millions of dollars to live out a lot of people's dreams, probably. So, um, he had a lot of hype coming into his NFL career. He was drafted pretty highly and kind of has that. At least at the time, he had that prototypical NFL quarterback body that scouts were looking for, and he's a tall, athletic guy with a big arm. So
John
almost
Elway
kind
probably really liked him.
it kind of honestly kind of reminds me of Drew Lock's build a little bit. Um, yeah, so he's never really had any. He never really stuck anywhere in the NFL, but um, and I don't even know how old he is at this point, honestly. But he's probably on the back half of his career. But uh, that should be an interesting spot for him to sit behind Tom Brady for sure.
Yeah, sit behind Tom Brady, who, he can't have that many more years left. And then maybe you step into a role where you're throwing to Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So,
It's
you
true. I
know,
mean, if something were to happen to Tom Brady for whatever reason, and he steps in there, he's got some pretty elite talent around him, at least on the offense, that might help him look pretty good.
yeah. That's just kind of. What do you think about Tom Brady for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Just, man, that seems like the most random thing. That's like, that is exactly Joe Montana to the Chiefs. That's like the same thing, basically.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I don't really understand the move. I'm sure there's a lot going on behind closed doors potentially at New England. But I feel like if I'm the greatest quarterback of all time and I have all these rings, um, I'm probably just gonna finish out my career where I am, and especially as old as he is, I can't have too many seasons left. I wouldn't think so. Um, I don't know, but I guess he just wanted to prove that he could do it somewhere else with a different coach, and
Yeah,
we'll
maybe
see how it
so.
goes.
Yeah, still weird. It'll be weird seeing him. I've seen some good photoshops though, and even that looks weird. It'll be weird seeing him in a Tampa Bay uniform on Sundays, but oh well.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't love him being in the NFC South either, although you know, yeah, I enjoyed Jameis Winston giving the Panthers the ball an extra 5 times per game. I don't think Tom Brady's going to be really doing that. And as I've noted before, uh, the Panthers are going to need all the help they can get next season, especially on defense.
At this point, I think
Um,
I'm just hoping that the season starts on time.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a valid concern, I would say,
Couldn't they
despite
just
what Dabo Sweeney says.
couldn't they just play the games without fans? Like I would be completely satisfied with at least that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I guess yeah. If you test all the teams, people would be upset, maybe justifiably, if all these NFL players with no symptoms got tests. Then I don't know. The teams would have to be like quarantined together all the time,
Yeah,
basically.
you would probably have to test them like what, like every couple weeks, or even
Yeah,
I don't
because
know. It
even
would be
even two
expensive.
teams, yeah, two teams and TV crews and stuff. I mean, you're talking about even without fans, you're probably talking about 200 people in the stadium
Yeah.
for one game. So man, I just don't know. Maybe they can all just get together and play Madden against each other like NBA players are doing tonight. Other former Tigers making news in the NFL. Aldon Smith, blast from the past there. Haven't heard from him in a while. He has signed, I believe, a 1-year deal with the Dallas Cowboys.
And that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, Aldon Smith, obviously a Mizzou legend. He had the single season sacks record until Shane Ray came along, and he was dynamite as a first and second year player in the NFL with the San Francisco 49ers. He was on their squad when they lost to Joe Flacco and the Ravens in the Super Bowl. Um, and I think he has the record for most sacks in the player's first 2 seasons. I think he's third most sacks in a player's first 3 seasons in the NFL. So he was off to an incredible start to his career.
Hmm.
Legal troubles. I honestly I can't even remember the different things if there were arrests or drug tests or what. So I can't speak to specifically on that what sort of derailed his career.
Seems like a lot of
Um,
them were DUIs, I think, but who knows? It was a
yeah,
lot of different stuff, but and
yeah.
the same thing with him on his age. I mean, I feel like he's got to be on the back half of his career age-wise at this point too. I would think he's probably in the 32 to 35 range, maybe.
You might be surprised. Maybe producer Cameron can tell us how old he is. But I mean, he was in the NFL as a. We're talking about Aldon Smith. He was in the NFL as a 23-year-old and has had 5 seasons away or so. I'd say he's 29 or 30. I'd say he's probably 30 years old. And producer Cameron says he is 30 years old. So
I guess that makes sense. And
yeah,
didn't you also say Blaine Gabbert was 30? Interesting.
yeah, looks like it. Yeah, and that also makes sense because they played together at Mizzou.
Yep.
But he was so fun to watch at Mizzou. He was really fun to watch for the 49ers. He tried to. I think he was with the Raiders most recently, and that didn't work out. But when he's on, I mean, he's one of the best edge rushers potentially the NFL has ever seen. At least that's what he showed in his first 3 seasons.
He was definitely on track to have that kind of legendary status for sure.
Yeah, and it's not even. I don't even think you can say small sample size really with him. I mean, 3 seasons worth of snaps.
Yeah,
and he was right there with the best to ever do it as far as rushing the passer.
I know. It's so disappointing that he couldn't just stay in the league somehow, figure out a way to
Yeah.
just behave well enough to stay on a roster.
Yep. Unfortunately, we do see those stories from time to time. Let's see here. So that recruiting dead period that was extended for football, um, it seems kind of odd to me that. So can you give me some more details? I don't know much about the recruiting calendar when it comes to these things. So is there just a restriction altogether on contacting recruits at all?
I think it's mainly just in-person stuff. I think they
Okay.
can continue to contact them as much as they want, as long as it's not anything in person. So obviously, we're not having any official or unofficial visits, or in-house visits or anything like that. But I still think that that could slow down the recruiting cycle a little bit. With the new signing period moving up to December a few years ago, that's definitely accelerated everything. It seemed like we were getting a lot of commits in like May and June as opposed to maybe a month or two after that, in the past. So it seems like we had a lot of commits last summer in like the May June area. So we may not see the class come together as quickly. But then again, it seems like Coach Drinkwitz is a little bit more aggressive recruiter than Barry Odom was. So maybe we still will see quite a few guys hop on earlier than we've seen in the past. So who knows? It'll be interesting to see how this affects the amount of commitments just for Mizzou and nationwide.
And then specifically for Mizzou football, it was reported they have fulfilled most of the recruiting restrictions or sanctions related to football recruiting from the sanctions that were handed down by the NCAA. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the only thing that they have to deal with going forward is just scholarship reductions.
Pretty much, yeah. So I think that they had a 7-week period where they were not allowed to communicate with recruits at all. That was no visits, and it might have been no communication. It was. I'm not exactly sure on those details, but I know for sure it was 7 weeks of recruiting restrictions. Yeah, apparently those have already been served or very close to it. So yeah, the only thing that we really have to worry about going forward is that the football team can only have 81 scholarships instead of 85.
Well, it's good to at least get most of that in the rearview mirror.
Yeah,
Obviously,
that was a mess.
yeah, still frustrating that the punishments were handed out the way they were, and 4 scholarships is still 4 scholarships. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not the end of the world, but it's also just something that's gonna hinder the football team a little bit. And that's why we see some things like Chance Looper maybe being a walk on. I don't know. Maybe they try to swing something like that if even if there weren't these restrictions, but you think about that kind of stuff even more as a staff, I would assume, when you're dealing with that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And the four scholarships probably won't be the end of the world, but like you said, it still makes you get creative potentially. You still have to try and squeeze everybody in and or figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah. Speaking of walk-ons, preferred walk-ons, I saw potentially maybe a preferred walk-on situation commitment with a wide receiver from Arkansas, Jaden Nash.
Yeah, it looks like he committed on Twitter yesterday evening, and I even kind of tweeted something about that, just kind of making everybody aware that he appeared to be committing, but the normal news outlets had not been reporting it yet. I couldn't really find much information on him. He hadn't really been recruited by any other like Power 5 schools or anything like that. I think a lot of his other offers were like FCS level and stuff like that. So it was a little bit of confusion, but I think it was eventually reported that he is confirmed going to be a preferred walk on. And I think he was a 2020 guy, so he might be a late addition to this class, and yeah, wide receiver.
Okay. Well, still adding names to the 2020 class, even if they are walk-on. I guess I'll take it, especially if they're walk-on. If they just want to,
Yeah,
not take up a scholarship, but maybe
exactly.
provide something,
Yep.
then I'm here for that.
Hmm.
Any other news? I think we had quite a bit there to talk about. Anything else that I'm missing that you can think of?
I think that covers it.
We see if there's anything worth talking about here on Twitter. No, I think we're good. The Mizzou social media accounts have been trying to fill the void with just kind of flashbacks and stuff. I saw the Matty Mock, the legendary Matty Mock, trucking the Minnesota defender in the Citrus Bowl from a few years ago. They're just trying to make people happy by just putting nice memories into the timeline while everybody's quarantined.
Hmm.
Oh, here's a little bit of news. We just can't stop talking about Josh Christopher every single week. It looks like he has added USC, that is Southern California, into what was his top four, now top five. So he put out a graphic kind of with a X over Kentucky from the previous top five, and now has the USC logo there. So just when we thought maybe we might reportedly maybe be 10 days away from him committing, he actually expanded his list. So
Man, I'm not gonna lie. This man likes the drama. I'm not gonna lie. And it's so funny that he literally, I've never seen that, anything like that before, where he actually physically marked out like another school and then put the new school over them, because it's just like seems a little
yeah,
I don't know,
I mean, if he goes to
tacky
USC after all of this, that'll just be like, I don't know, one of the most bizarre recruitments that I've seen in a while.
for sure.
Uh,
Yeah, imagine if he
Gosh,
just didn't even go to USC. I mean, like, why do you even add them at this point?
I know that's what gets me scared as a Mizzou fan is like, why like, I don't know if he's this close to deciding.
It's
We
so
always
late.
talk about players having already known,
Yeah,
well before they actually make their decision. And for him to add a school publicly this late in the process, as a Mizzou fan, it's got me scared. Like the only reason he would add them is because he's going to go there.
I don't even like. I think that he's kind of fallen off my radar at this point because I just know we don't really have a shot. And honestly, I'd probably rather see. I think I saw that. Literally just thought of this, that one of USC's best players declared for the draft recently. So I wonder if that spot opening up had anything to do with his decision. I don't know, but I think I'd probably rather see him go to USC or like Arizona State than Michigan, to be honest. I
Yeah,
don't really
probably
know
me too.
why, but
Well, if you're over the recruitment, and if you're just done with it, then I'll try to just only bring it up once a week.
oh,
And
no, you're good, man. We got to talk about him until he
yeah,
commits and is out of Missouri's like chances for sure. Then we got to keep talking about him if there's updates.
if he adds a sixth team next week, I just won't say anything. We'll just breeze right by it. All right. I think that's it for the news then. We don't have a big segment here to talk about, but I sent you, Kyle, and producer Cameron this. I don't know why I've never mentioned it on the podcast before, but it's kind of a random spreadsheet table document that I started working on, I think probably in like 2015. And I kind of took inspiration from Rock M Nation's scholarship graphic. So they have this well-known over there scholarship graphic that kind of keeps track of the outlook and situation for the team for the upcoming years. And I kind of used that as inspiration and then put a little bit of a tweak on it to give even more information. And producer Cameron, I think you have the ability to pull that up on your end so
Yep,
we
let
can
me
take a
pull
look
that up
at
real
it.
quick for you.
I'm enjoying
And so,
watching producer Cameron's like poster like flail around behind him. It like fell off the wall.
Oh, I keep hearing noise. I keep hearing noises outside my headphones. I think someone's trying to get in my window or something. It's just the poster falling down.
it's hanging on
I
for
had
dear
the
life.
I had the poster we got at the last game that we went to, and it doesn't want to stay up. Probably doesn't help that I tried to put it over a picture I already had.
So I got kind of creative with this table, and I used some color coding to note the class that each player was in, and I did this going all the way back to the Elite Eight team in 2008, 2009 with Damari Carroll, and so that'd be English, Denman, Bowers, freshman seasons. And so we've got this pulled up here now. I think everybody will be able to see it on YouTube. If you're listening, just go on over to YouTube and you'll be able to see what we're talking about. Um, it's color coded based on the year or the class that each player is in, and then also the blue players' names are ones that completed all 4 years of eligibility at Mizzou. So that does not include a player like Damari Carroll, who transferred from Vanderbilt but finished his career there. It would only include a player like Matt Lawrence, who went through all 4 years of eligibility at Missouri. And then also the green names are ones that left early to pursue a professional basketball career. And then the red ones are players that were either dismissed or transferred from the team before their eligibility was up. Um, so I thought maybe we could just kind of look at it, and I've used it over the years to kind of maybe track trends. It's now long enough. It's from 2008-9 season all the way through this most recent season that just completed. So it's now finally long enough to where you can maybe see some trends and see, some of it's kind of obvious of what goes into, creating continuity in a program. But was there anything that kind of stood out to you, Kyle? And if we mentioned something, just let producer Cameron know, and we'll zoom in on that section.
I think honestly the first thing I mentioned to you when we briefly looked at this before we started recording was there's some names on this transfer list that I don't even recognize. The first three on the list there on the transfer tracker, looks like we got Tyler Stone, Miguel Paul, and John Underwood. I've never heard of any of those three names, which is crazy. Obviously, I've heard of everybody after that, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
That would have been
Miguel
pretty early
Paul was the
on.
only one. Yeah, he was the only one that really had much playing time at all. Tyler Stone and John Underwood were both big men. Uh, Funny story about Tyler Stone. We played SEMO while he was there later after this, or after he transferred, and he was like the star of the show at SEMO when they came to Mizzou Arena at that time. Producer Cameron, if you could scroll up to just showing the teams there um, early on. Yeah, and something that stands out to me when you look at this, this first section from 0809 through 1314. So that's uh, 2 seasons of Mike Anderson and 3 seasons of Mike Anderson and 3 seasons of Frank Haith. And what stands out to me is plenty of blue, so players that are staying in the program uh, for all 4 years of eligibility, and then the red being, for the most part, kept to the bottom of the team. So we've got the most common starting five at the top, and then the bench are shown in the order of minutes played that season. So the red being sort of kept towards the bottom of the team, and then producer Cameron, if you go on down the timeline to the right, you start to see not much blue, and the red is starting to creep up into the starting lineup when you got players like Jonathan Williams, Wes Clark, Naaman Wright, and then just this huge, it's red, but it's a black hole in the Kim Anderson, and then that first year of Conzo Martin, just so many players transferring or being dismissed from the team, and it's just that 3 year span. It just has so many names in red. And then the last thing that I'll point out, let you talk, Kyle, is Ryan Rosberg there in the middle, the only person that completed 4 years of eligibility at Mizzou from 2014 to 2018. So 5 full seasons there, and one player that did all 4 years at Mizzou.
Yeah, I mean, there's honestly so much to take in when you look at a visual like this, but it is a good visual representation um, of with just what the last few years have looked like, and it's crazy to think that there's so few players who have, and this is, a decade's time or maybe even a little bit more. We probably only have 6 or 7 guys that have completed their Missouri career from start to finish at Mizzou. So that it's crazy to think how few guys are in that little blue category. And that the last 3 guys that we've had, Ryan Rosberg, Kevin Purrier, and Reed Nico, um, important guys on their teams, but nobody that's just a star player or anything like that. So it definitely explain. This is a good representation of the struggles that we've had the last few years, because I think that especially a program like Missouri just has to build a successful program around those kind of players.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. Even those three guys that are the most recent ones to, have play their full 4 years at Mizzou, they weren't, they weren't the star of the show by any means. And you look at the most recent season, Torrance Watson. Well, I guess let me see here. Jeremiah Tillman and Mitchell Smith will be the next ones to have that opportunity to be blue on my chart here and complete their eligibility for Mizzou. And it seems like, that first year under Conzo Martin, plenty of 2 transfers and a dismissal, but still kept out of the starting lineup for the most part. If Terrence Phillips plays the whole season, maybe the starting lineup looks a little bit different. But, adding those blue players back in that are staying the full 4 seasons and limiting those transfers to the bottom of the roster, you can start to see how we will be on track to continue that continuity and hopefully get the thing will come full circle and we'll be back to the same place we were, at the beginning of the decade when we were just seeing excellent continuity and Missouri was in the NCAA tournament every single year.
Yeah, it's just kind of a cycle, and I mean it even goes into recruiting. I think that whenever you can boast that you've had some incredible continuity, it definitely helps recruiting. And so I don't know, it's just especially, I mean, look at 2015 and 16. Literally
Yeah.
half the roster is transferred out and or not like 4-year players.
Yeah,
Just
funny you should mention that season because I've got behind me right here a few guys that were looking over me this episode, and here we have Naaman Wright, Jonathan Williams, Jakeenan Gant, Techie Gill Caesar, Wes Clark, uh, D'Angelo Allen, Tremaine Isabel. Those guys all transferred. That's so many names from one team that were scholarship players that all left. And that you can't overstate the setback losing basically an entire large recruiting class plus a few more. You can't overstate the effect that has on a basketball program.
yeah, I mean just looking at that team, that was not a good team. Their
No, but
record
also
of 10 and 21 shows that for sure, but
yeah,
man,
3-15 in conference. But also there's pieces there. I mean, and I think maybe we'll do a kind of a rewriting Mizzou history, Mizzou basketball history before too long, where we look at maybe some what ifs. I mean, you look just back a few years earlier where Phil Pressey, Jordan Clarkson, and Jabari Brown all left before their eligibility was up. 3 players in 2 seasons. They were all starters, obviously. And Frank Haith leaving for Tulsa. Obviously, we know the administration didn't want to extend him at that time, so the writing was kind of on the wall there. So there's definitely a what if that if maybe if those guys stick around and have a little bit different situations, and Frank Haith is still the coach, I think that would maybe be a fun what if to do and maybe try to figure out what their record would be in that situation. But he had the recruiting and transfer train rolling with um, that recruiting class, and even the one before that with Wes Clark and Jonathan Williams and Torrin Jones, where they were set up to be at least moderately successful through what ended up being the Kim Anderson era.
Yeah, I feel like that was kind of like the beginning of when transferring in college basketball really started to take off too, just in general. The amount of players that we see transfer these days, not sure that was always the case, but um, definitely Coach Haith took advantage, I guess if you want to call it that, of getting a lot of transfers on the roster and guys that had experience at other schools, and some were very impactful. It's kind of amazing that he was able to get talents like Jordan Clarkson and Jabari Brown at Missouri. You know, I guess, and they kind of came from opposite ends of the spectrum, where Jabari Brown was, like a five-star player coming out of high school and didn't really play very much at Oregon, and then ended up at Missouri. And then Jordan Clarkson, if I remember correctly, was at Tulsa and
Yep.
not very highly ranked, and kind of moved up in the world, and they ended up just kind of coming together at Missouri. But I agree that it might have been interesting to see what those two guys could have done together, if they had another year, if they would have stayed, because I think there was definitely some off the court stuff going on that was clearly a distraction to them at the time. But it was still a pretty fun season.
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, maybe we'll dive into that a little bit more on a what if and kind of rewrite history there, just for fun. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of put this out there and let you guys have it, and it can be kind of just a reference. We may refer to it from time to time, and I'll obviously keep updating it and bring it back eventually, and we'll kind of be tracking the continuity as we go. But for some reason, oh yeah, well I was just filling it out with the most recent results of the season. I was like, oh, I don't think I've ever shared that with Cameron and Kyle. So,
Well, thank
and
you for sharing.
since we don't have any games to talk about, I thought, hey, we might as well show the audience.
That's some good data.
Yeah, that transfer tracker, man, that list is getting pretty long. And also, if you notice, Cameron, if you can go back over there real quick, how many players? There's a few that have transferred twice. And actually, C.J. Robertson, Blake Harris, they're still listed as Texas Tech and NC State, but they're neither one of them are. They still have eligibility, and they're no longer with either one of those programs. So potentially, there's going to be another school next to both of their names. And then you look at like Terrence Phillips and KJ Santos, no team next to them, and I don't think there ever will be, because I think their basketball careers were over when they transferred from Missouri. So there is a when you talk about transfers, there's a stigma. You don't want too many transfers out of your program, and I think maybe some people are giving Coach Martin a hard time with some of the players that he's lost to transfer. But when they go to really solid programs like Texas Tech and NC State and can't make it work there either, then maybe it wasn't as much a Conzo Martin problem. And then on the flip side, when you have a player like, obviously the one that sticks out the most is Jonathan Williams on the other extreme, who goes to Gonzaga and is just, a perfect marriage, and he possibly could have been at the collegiate level and actually end up playing for the Los Angeles Lakers at one point. That's a situation where you kind of feel like, he was not the problem in that situation.
Yeah, it's a good point. And yeah, some of these guys, it's a little bit too early maybe to speculate on, but I think you could probably figure out which guys were probably the problem and not the coach's problem. But sometimes just things don't work out, and we've talked about it a little bit the last month or so, that there's a lot that goes on. We just turn on ESPN or SEC Network and watch the game, and that's all we see into the lives of these guys sometimes. And there's a lot more to it than what we see on the court. And these guys are with each other 24/7, in practice and whatever.
Roommates a lot of the time.
Yeah, so there's a lot of time off the court to gel or to not gel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, now you're going to have a leg up when we do our Where Are They Now segments, because you've kind of got the cheat sheet here. Well, I think that's basically all I had for everybody. I don't know, maybe we can figure out a way to maybe put this out on Twitter as an image or something if it's clear enough for people to look at. But
yeah,
I think that's pretty much all the info I had.
yeah. Hopefully, you guys are doing all right in quarantine still, or if you're still going to work. I'm sure there's some of you out there that are doing that. Obviously, Cameron, you're still going to work, so um, just appreciate you guys still tuning in and listening during some interesting times. So hopefully this can just maybe bring you some relief or give you something else to think about for a little while. And if you think of any content that you want us to talk about or whatever the case is, just reach out to us on Twitter. And I'm sure that this is definitely a time of year where we're looking for things to talk about for sure. So
Yeah, any questions or just Mizzou opinions you want to hear? A Mizzou related or non-related would you rather segment, anything that you want to throw out there, we'll give it a shot.
yeah. All right, you can find this. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter at Missouri No. We're on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
Be sure to navigate over to YouTube to look at that beautiful chart that we were referencing.
Yes, absolutely.
And you can find me on Twitter at C_Alberto8. Thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next week. Everyone say bye to Kim. Everyone say bye to Cameron's poster that fell down.